Hello. This is the Olympians for Smart Development and Livable Neighborhoods second video on housing in Olympia. This time we'll focus on housing affordability and the factors that influence it. In the last 4 years, the city has pushed the passage of the Missing Middle Plan, which was then found to be illegal. Now, the city is proposing the Housing Options Plan. To justify these plans, the city has touted disproven benefits they would bring. This video is meant to help you understand the big picture of what's been happening to housing in the last 20 years and most recently. Your narrators will be Shanti Mai and Walt Jorgensen.
Whether you are a renter, owner of an apartment, condo, or house, you know that housing costs have been increasing quickly in the Puget Sound area. If your household earns under $50,000 a year, you're one of almost half of Olympia households who have to sacrifice savings and other purchases to pay the rent. The City of Olympia has proposed the Housing Options Plan, which may make this situation worse. Other cities have tried similar plans, saying they would make housing more affordable, but the opposite has happened.
For example, the city began by saying that by simply making neighborhoods more dense, by permitting larger rental buildings, housing would become affordable to low-income renters. Well, later the city admitted that this plan would only create market-rate housing. Another claim made was that neighborhood diversity would increase with these code changes. Well, finally the city assured, too, that affordable older homes would not be torn down to make way for more profitable rentals. This is not at all what other cities have found. The Housing Options Plan is about opening up more land for investors to build rental apartments in Olympia's neighborhoods. The city's plans favor allowing larger rental buildings to be built on smaller lots. This will suddenly make our neighborhoods attractive as a new source of profit for investors, instead of as stable, pleasant places to call home, or even create a nest egg.
We need facts to guide us as we create affordable housing. This way we can densify our neighborhoods and the rest of the city in ways that don't eliminate the assets we enjoy. Future residents will then continue to enjoy the green space, light, quiet, and the general environment Olympia's neighborhoods offer. In this video, we'll focus mainly on rental housing, since people in the most desperate need of affordable housing are renters. Keep watching to understand why we have a housing crisis and what we can do about it. What is affordable housing? It depends on your income, where you live, and how big your family is. What determines the cost of rent in a new housing unit? The cost of construction sets the minimum rent for new rental housing, while the local market determines the maximum rent that can be asked. The Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, defines affordable housing as requiring no more than 30% of a household's income. How affordable is Olympia housing right now? OSD&LN found the most recent available housing data for Olympia households for 2017. We found a table of household incomes for all the households in Olympia, and then found the maximum amount each household should pay in monthly rent. It turns out that about 45% of Olympia households can afford a rent no more than $1,200 per month. About 2/3 of this group, or about a quarter of Olympia households, can't afford rents greater than $700 per month.
How does this compare with the cost of renting in Olympia? Well, according to Rent Cafe, in 2020, only 1 in 100 Olympia apartments rents for under $700 per month. Another fifth rents for between $700 and $1,000 per month. That means only one apartment is available for below $700 per month for every 28 households needing it. What about the newly built apartments downtown? what are their rents? Even the smallest studio apartments rent for more than $700, and most require rent of more than $1,200. So these new apartments won't solve any problems for almost half of Olympia renters. However, as expensive as these apartments are, they are currently sold out. So clearly people that can afford them need them, and we should probably build even more downtown. But realize that 4 of these buildings received hefty tax breaks from the city. And then this tax burden was then transferred to the rest of us. Shouldn't tax breaks go to low-income housing to make it even possible? So what does all of this tell us? For those on the lower half of the income spectrum, no affordable new apartments are being built. And for every 2 households needing rent of $1,200 and below, only 1 apartment currently exists. There are people who most desperately need affordable housing. These people should be first priority for new housing.
How affordable is the city's proposed new housing? What kinds of new housing does the Housing Options Plan prescribe that we don't already allow in our already inclusive neighborhoods? More profitable rental units, duplexes, triplexes, and courtyard apartments on smaller lots. The city wouldn't require these units to be affordable. So what would landlords charge? As mentioned before, the minimum rent possible would depend on the cost of construction. A rule of thumb for landlords is charge about 1% of the purchase price or building cost of a building to cover mortgage payments, taxes, maintenance costs, and a small profit. So we'll use this rule to calculate the cost to build new buildings of various housing types, and then calculate minimum rent. We use the typical square footage of each housing type. In general, the smaller the living space, the higher the building cost per square foot. But in general, the smaller the apartment, the smaller the rent. Affordable rents under $1,200 per month are possible for manufactured homes, a prefab ADU, or a tiny house. All of these are already allowed in our neighborhoods without the city's zoning change. But if you really want to get serious about creating more affordable housing more quickly for those who most need it, you would build large apartment buildings along urban corridors, which have good transportation and services. This is exactly what the Olympia's comprehensive plan, developed with years of public input, already says. But the city's Housing Options Plan doesn't address more affordable housing.
What is gentrification? It's when new housing development and their surrounding services become so expensive that the original residents cannot afford to live or shop there anymore. They have to move elsewhere. Being priced out of your neighborhood is called being displaced. Gentrification doesn't just happen because developers and investors want to build in the neighborhoods. No, it has to be allowed by the local government to occur at all, and it occurs through zoning. Right now, Olympia's neighborhoods are valued because they're stable and enjoyable places to live. Proper zoning is the only protection residents have to prevent investors from treating their neighborhood homes as just another profit-generating commodity. When the land in existing neighborhoods becomes more valuable, because denser, more profitable multifamily buildings are allowed, the land under older homes becomes worth more than the house itself. Meanwhile, the increase in the land value of a single-family home in the neighborhood goes hand in hand with a reduction in the value of the home itself, and the quality of life decreases as well. Houses become hemmed in under the shadow of bigger multifamily developments, along with lack of parking, congestion, and loss of tree canopy. Property development only makes sense if there is what is called a rent gap. A rent gap is the difference between the rent a property yields now and the higher rents possible if old housing were replaced. Of course, older, cheaper, smaller houses have a larger rent gap than more expensive ones, and the neighborhoods they are in attract investors first. Redevelopment eliminates the most affordable, older housing first. Missing middle and similar zoning plans are touted to make housing more affordable by creating more multifamily units. It is also theorized that diversity, racial, economic, and cultural, in neighborhoods will increase with this multifamily housing. But what has happened in other cities that have allowed profitable multifamily buildings in low-density neighborhoods? Gentrification, with most new housing being upscale, but almost no low-rent housing being created.
Big investment funds snap up private homes. An often overlooked cause of higher housing prices and rents is a trend that began almost 20 years ago. Institutional investors from all over the world have systematically bought private American homes, especially the cheaper ones with larger lots. These companies tear down houses or convert them to rentals, consistently charging higher rents. Not only has this reduced the housing inventory, but it has made local would-be homeowners and landlords bid against huge companies when they try to buy a house. Certainly this process has not made renting or home ownership any more affordable. But isn't this a small problem? No. Home ownership rates have dropped 10% in that time. From 2006 to 2014, between 7 and 22% of homes on the market each year were bought by institutional investors. This is a significant chunk of houses made unavailable to first-time home buyers, yet the increase in rentals from these same houses did not create lower rents. This is a business decision to greatly increase Olympia neighborhood's density without considering the consequences. The proposed housing plan for our neighborhoods sacrifices the livability of our neighborhoods and increases environmental risks. It will put even more pressure on housing prices and reduce our existing quality of life and environment. Why? To attract people from higher-priced places to Olympia's lower housing costs, less crowded schools, and not yet despoiled quality of life. Yet newcomers continue to rival, will eliminate the lifestyle they came to experience, for them and for those of us who already live here. Are we overreacting? Seattle, from 2007 to 2014, 1 out of 4 Seattle residents moved out of their homes. Of the people who moved elsewhere, more than a third moved to find more space. 1 out of 7 saw their rents become unaffordable. For 5%, their old apartments were demolished, and for 2%, their friends and neighbors had moved away. That's a lot of displacement in 7 years. From 2011 to 2019, average Seattle rents increased 1.5 times as fast as the general cost of living.
Seattle's Central District experienced multifamily development in its neighborhoods and gentrification from the late 1990s onward. And as a direct result, the population of Black residents decreased from 64% in 1990 to only 14% in 2019. This clearly was not an increase in diversity. It was a recolonization of a healthy Black neighborhood by wealthier white people.
In 2019, the Vice President of the Minneapolis Planning Commission listed the following effects of the elimination of single-family zoning in Minneapolis. Most displaced people were poor people and people of color. Most builders of duplexes went cheap on construction. 3/4 of nuisance houses were owned by absentee landlords. Locals were outbid for houses by large investors. What do we want? Olympia's near-town neighborhoods are widely popular with a mix of housing and income levels. About half of these neighbors are renters. People who can buy a home often live in it for a long time and establish relationships with their neighbors and community. Renters of homes also value that stability and community. Adding expensive multiplex units will reduce quality of life and lead to gentrification. Housing prices and living costs will rise, resulting in eventual displacement of existing residents, similar to what has happened elsewhere. Homes in Olympia's existing neighborhoods are very popular for renters and buyers. If we don't preserve their assets for future residents, people will find these assets by building in farmland.
We feel that with proper planning, density can be done right and can create housing that's affordable to those who need it most. Let's center high-density housing on main streets with good services, some of which will be subsidized. And let's continue to densify our neighborhoods with affordable housing types that are already permitted here. Zoning which discourages higher profit investment housing in our neighborhoods actually slows the rise in housing prices. Maintaining our neighborhoods' very popular quality of life for future renters and owners is a wise, sustainable plan.